The mahogany doors of the Whitmore mansion slammed behind me with a finality that echoed through my bones. My mother-in-law, Patricia, stood on the marble steps, her Hermes scarf fluttering in the wind as she looked down at me with undisguised contempt. "Poor girls don't belong in our family, Sophia," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "I don't know what fantasy Marcus sold you, but this charade ends now. Take your shabby little suitcase and go back to whatever trailer park you crawled out of." I stood there in the circular driveway, rain beginning to soak through my coat, watching my husband of 3 years peer out from behind the curtains upstairs. Marcus didn't come down. He didn't defend me. He just watched as his parents threw me out like yesterday's garbage. "My son is an executive at a Fortune 500 company," Patricia continued, gesturing dramatically. "He'll be CEO within 5 years. He needs a wife who matches his station, not some nobody who works as what was it again? A secretary? I'm in management," I said quietly, but she waved her hand dismissively. "Same difference. Marcus deserves someone from our social circle. Someone with breeding, with class, with a trust fund. Not someone who had to take out student loans." She spat the last 2 words like they were poison. My father-in-law, Richard, emerged from the house, checking his Rolex. "The car will take you to the bus station. Consider yourself lucky we're not making you walk. Oh, and don't bother contacting Marcus. Our lawyers will handle the divorce proceedings. We'll be generous, maybe throw you a few thousand to disappear quietly." I picked up my suitcase, the one Patricia had called shabby, though it was actually a designer piece I'd bought with my own money, and walked toward the waiting town car. Before getting in, I turned back one last time. "You know what's funny?" I said, my voice steady despite the tears threatening to fall. "You don't even know who I really am, or who your son really is." Patricia laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. "Oh, we know exactly who you are. Nobody. And we know our son is destined for greatness." I smiled then, a small, private smile. "We'll see about that." The ride to the bus station was silent. I didn't take the bus, though. Instead, I called my driver. Yes, I had a driver, and had him pick me up in my own car. Patricia and Richard Whitmore had no idea that their son's nobody wife was actually Sophia Winters, founder and CEO of Nexus Technologies, one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country. I'd met Marcus at a charity gala 2 years ago. He'd been charming, funny, and refreshingly unaware of who I was. I'd been wearing a simple cocktail dress, having come straight from the office, and he'd assumed I was someone's plus one. When he'd asked what I did, I'd simply said, "I work in tech," and left it at that. The whirlwind romance that followed had been intoxicating. Marcus had swept me off my feet with his confidence, his stories about his high-powered job, his family's influence. He'd insisted on paying for everything, playing the role of the successful executive taking care of his less fortunate girlfriend. I'd found it endearing at first, this need to be the provider. I'd gone along with it, thinking it was harmless male ego. We'd gotten married in a small ceremony. Marcus had said he preferred it intimate, though now I suspected he'd been embarrassed by my supposed lack of connections. I'd kept my maiden name for business reasons, which his parents had taken as another sign of my inappropriate background. The truth was, I'd fallen in love with Marcus. Despite his pretensions, despite his need to appear successful, there had been something vulnerable about him that touched me. I'd thought that once we were married, I could gradually reveal the truth, help him become the man he pretended to be. But then came the family dinners. The snide comments about my clothes, which cost more than Patricia's entire outfit, not that she'd recognize quality without a visible logo. The constant digs about my family, hardworking people who'd built their own small business from nothing. The suggestions that I should quit my little job and focus on being a proper Whitmore wife. And Marcus? He'd sit there, silent, occasionally nodding along with his parents' assessments. He'd even started joining in, suggesting I take etiquette classes, hire a stylist, learn to play golf at the country club. I'd tried to tell him the truth several times. But whenever I started with about my job, he'd interrupt with his own stories about his important meetings, his big deals, his impressive colleagues. He'd painted such a vivid picture of his corporate success that I'd started to wonder if maybe I was wrong about him. Until last month, when I'd decided to surprise him at his office. Nexus Technologies occupied 3 floors of a gleaming downtown high-rise. My assistant had cleared my schedule, and I'd thought it would be romantic to take my husband to lunch. I'd asked reception to call up to the executive floor, to Marcus Whitmore's office. The receptionist had looked confused. "I'm sorry, we don't have a Marcus Whitmore on the executive floor." Could you check again? He's in strategic development. She typed into her computer, then frowned. Oh, I see. Marcus Whitmore. He's in facilities management. Basement level. My heart had sunk. Not because he was a janitor. There's no shame in honest work, but because of the lies. The elaborate, unnecessary lies. I'd gone down to the basement, and there he was. Marcus, in a gray uniform, pushing a cleaning cart. He'd looked up, seen me, and his face had gone white. Sophia? What are you doing here? I work here, I'd said simply. I have for 8 years. The confession had come pouring out. How he'd been let go from his actual executive job 4 years ago. How his parents didn't know, couldn't know. How they'd cut him off financially if they found out. How he'd been desperately trying to find another executive position while working as a janitor to pay his bills. Why didn't you tell me? I'd asked. Because you thought I was successful. Because you'd never love a failure. Marcus, I fell in love with you, not your job title. But he couldn't hear it. Couldn't believe it. The shame was too deep, the fear of his parents too strong. He begged me not to tell anyone, and I'd agreed, thinking we could work through it together. That was before they threw me out. Before Patricia called me trailer trash. Before Richard offered me money to disappear. Before Marcus watched from the window and did nothing. Now, sitting in my actual office, the corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, I pulled up Marcus's employment file. 3 years of perfect attendance. Good reviews from his supervisor. A note about his cheerful attitude and strong work ethic. In any other circumstance, I'd have promoted him. My phone buzzed. 12 missed calls from Marcus. 20 texts, escalating from confused to panicked. Sophia, where are you? Why aren't you at the bus station? My parents said you left in a different car. Please call me back. I'm sorry I didn't come down. I wanted to, but they would have suspected something. Sophia, please. Why is your phone going straight to voicemail? I went to your apartment. The doorman says you don't live there. He says the penthouse belongs to someone named S. Winters? I don't understand what's happening. Please answer me. I ignored them all. Instead, I called my head of HR. Janet, I need you to pull an employee file for me. Marcus Whitmore, Facilities Management. Yes, I need his complete record. Emergency contact information, everything. While I waited, I thought about the past 3 years. The sneaking around his parents. The separate finances because Marcus insisted on maintaining independence. The small apartment I'd kept because he'd said his parents would visit our home and judge it. The designer clothes I'd hidden in favor of department store finds to avoid questions. I'd made myself small for him. Diminished my own light so his lies could shine brighter. Janet knocked and entered with the file. Is there a problem with this employee? No, I said, scanning the emergency contact information. He's actually been an exemplary janitor. I'm considering him for a promotion. She looked surprised but nodded. He'd be moving up to facilities supervisor? Something like that. After she left, I composed an email to Patricia and Richard Whitmore. I attached Marcus's complete employment record. 3 years of time cards, duty rosters, performance reviews, pay stubs showing his hourly wage. Everything that proved their executive son had been cleaning toilets and emptying trash cans at Nexus Technologies. But I didn't stop there. I included photos from our corporate events. Marcus in his janitor uniform in the background while I gave keynote speeches. Security footage of him entering through the service entrance every morning at 5 a.m. His badge photo with facilities staff clearly visible. The subject line read, "Regarding your son's impressive career." The body was simple. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore, I thought you should know the truth about your son's executive position at our company. Marcus has been a valued member of our janitorial staff for 3 years. While there's absolutely no shame in honest work, I thought you should be aware of the reality, given your strong opinions about poor people not belonging in your family. Also, I should clarify my own position. I'm not a secretary. I'm the founder and CEO of Nexus Technologies. My net worth exceeded your family's assets about 5 years ago. I mention this not to boast, but to correct your misconception that I married your son for money or status. I married Marcus because I loved him. I kept my identity secret because he seemed to need to feel like the successful one. I accepted your insults and snobbery because I thought eventually we'd find a way to bridge the gap. But watching him stand silent while you threw me out of your house for being poor made me realize something. The problem isn't that Marcus is a janitor. The problem is that he's a coward. And he learned that from you. I'll be filing for divorce, as you suggested. Though I suspect Marcus will need that generous settlement more than I will. Best regards, Sophia Winters, CEO Nexus Technologies. P.S. Marcus is a good janitor. I'm promoting him to facilities supervisor. He'll need the raise for his new apartment, since I assume you'll be kicking him out once you realize he's been lying to you for 4 years. I hit send. Then I called my lawyer. David, I need you to prepare divorce papers. Yes, the prenup is ironclad. He gets nothing except what he earned as a janitor during our marriage. About $120,000 total. Yes, I'm sure. My phone exploded with calls. Marcus, Patricia, Richard, unknown numbers that were probably their lawyers. I ignored them all and went back to work. I had a company to run, after all. It wasn't until that evening, as I sat in my real penthouse apartment, that I allowed myself to feel the full weight of what had happened. Not the divorce, that was just paperwork. But the betrayal. The realization that Marcus had never loved me, just the idea of what I represented. Someone lesser than him. Someone who made him feel successful by comparison. My assistant forwarded me a message from building security. The Whitmores had shown up at Nexus Technologies, demanding to see me. They'd been escorted out, but not before Patricia had made a scene in the lobby, screaming about lawsuits and fraud and how I'd tricked her precious son. Marcus had been suspended pending an investigation into whether he'd misused his access to the building. Security footage showed him trying to access the executive floors with his janitorial credentials multiple times over the past month, probably trying to verify if I really worked there. I felt sorry for him, in a way. He'd built such an elaborate house of cards, and for what? His parents' approval? Their money? Their perception of success? A text came through from an unknown number. I almost deleted it, but something made me read it. This is Marcus, using a coworker's phone. I know you probably won't believe me, but I did love you. I just loved the idea of being someone important more. I'm sorry. I'm moving back to Ohio. Starting over. Maybe this time I'll try being honest about who I am. Thank you for the promotion. I don't deserve it, but I'll try to earn it. Take care, Sophia. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I deleted it and blocked the number. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. Marcus had moved away, his parents had retreated into their mansion, and I'd gone back to my life. The real one, not the diminished version I'd created for them. At a tech conference in San Francisco, a young woman approached me after my keynote speech. Ms. Winters, I just wanted to say thank you. I've been hiding my success from my boyfriend because he feels threatened by it. But hearing your story in the news, it made me realize I shouldn't have to make myself smaller for someone else's ego. I smiled at her. You're right. Never dim your light for someone who can't handle your shine. She walked away, and I turned back to the crowd of entrepreneurs and innovators waiting to meet me. This was my world. One where success was celebrated, not hidden. Where people were valued for their achievements, not their ability to deceive. Patricia Whitmore had been wrong about one thing. Poor girls did belong in their family. Because their precious son was one of them. The only difference was I'd built my fortune through hard work and innovation. All Marcus had built was a palace of lies. And in the end, that palace had crumbled, taking everyone in it down with it. Everyone except the poor girl, who'd had the audacity to love their son for who he really was. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd kicked me out for being poor. But I was the richest person in that mansion. And they never even knew it. Thanks for watching. See you again in the next video. Stay stunned.